So this is in, again, on the examples page. And if we scroll down, there's a section that demonstrates different types of outputs. And so one of the outputs is plot output. And this is a really basic example, once again. So our UI is very similar. We have an input slider. And this time we have an output plot. And it's named plot. But just for clarity, I'll call it my plot, just so that that's not confusing. Now, for this example, we also needed to import Matplotlib and NumPy to generate some random data. So the code is pretty similar to what we had before. We have this output decorator, and we have a render plot decorator, this time instead of render text. And it has some alt text, which will display if you hover over the plot. And then we have the function that actually generates the plot. Now, these first two lines here, this is just some NumPy code to generate random numbers. And then this is a Matplotlib histogram. So we just say plt.hist. We give it the data that we generated. And for this particular function, the second parameter is how many bins are in the histogram. So that's basically like how wide each of these bars is. So if I make it 5, there's 5 of these bars. If I make it 100, there's 100 of them. So that's all that it really takes to create a plot in Shiny. You just say render.plot, and then if you're using Matplotlib, you can say plt.hist. Now, Shiny also currently supports Seaborn and Plot9, and it also supports other plotting libraries that work in the browser. So, for example, it supports Plotly and Altair, and those are supported via the Shiny widgets package. But I'm not going to go over those right now. But just so you know, to use those, you don't use render plot. There's a different function for those, and we'll have examples for that as well. Okay, so if we want to plot like an actual data set instead of just this fake histogram, there's a great example data set in a package called Palmer Penguins. And let's import that like this from Palmer Penguins import load _ penguins. Okay, now, well, one cool thing that you can do with Shiny Live is that I can actually execute this line of code. So I'm on a Mac, so I already hit Command Enter, and it'll execute in the terminal. On a Windows machine or Linux, you'd press Control Enter, but I'll just run it like that. So this Palmer Penguins package it's just available, and if I run load penguins down here, it'll run it in this Python console and print it out here. So we can see that this is a data frame. It's got 344 rows and 8 columns, and it's got data about various penguin specimens that were in the wild. Okay, so let's say we want to take this data set and make a scatter plot of some of the measurements that we took of these penguins. So let's get rid of all this stuff here. We're going to do this differently. And in fact, this time we're also going to use the Seaborn package for plotting. So let's say import Seaborn as SNS. And then I also think we don't need NumPy, we don't need Matplotlib. All right. So this time, we're going to do a different kind of plot here. So let's say we'll do penguins equals load penguins. And now we want to make a plot out of this. So I actually happen to have done this already. This is like in the cooking show where you put the pan in one oven and you take it out of the other one. So this is the code here for this plot. And let's add a couple other things. So in this case, I've used Seaborn to create this plot object, and then I'm going to return that plot object. Previously with Matplotlib, what I did was I just had it do the plotting command instead of returning a Matplotlib figure object. And that's another way that you can do it, but in this case, I'm going to have it return the plot object. Okay, so if I run this, it's going to take a moment to load Seaborn, I think. And there we have our scatter plot. And this is a scatter plot for the 3 different species of penguins. So that's what's happening here. Hue is species. And we've also fit these linear model lines, or these linear model fit lines to each subset of the data. Now the slider doesn't actually do anything right now. So I could take it out, or I could figure out what I want to do with it. So let's say we just want to look at one species at a time. So instead of looking at all of them all at once. So right now we have this slider input that doesn't actually do anything. So let's get rid of that, and let's add something that lets us select a particular species to look at. So let's say UI.input, we can do, how about input select? This will give us a selection box. So we can say this is which species we want to look at. And let's say which species is your favorite. And then we can give it a list of choices. So I'm just going to do it on the next line. We can say Adelie, which I hope that's how to pronounce it, Gentoo, and Chinstrap. Okay, and then we can put a comma there. And another cool thing about this online editor is you can just click this button and it'll reformat the code. In theory. There we go. Oh, it expects it to be kind of wide. The editor to be kind of wide. Okay, so that gives us, we'll rerun this application, and then we can select a particular species of penguin. And now, again, this is not hooked up to anything. We've just added the UI component. So in order to make this actually work, let's take a subset of this data. So we can say penguins equals penguins where we can do it this way. Penguin species equals input. All right, so this is going to take a subset for just one species, and let's rerun this app. So this is just showing us the data for Adelie penguins. And if we change it, it's showing us the data for Gentoo penguins and Chinstrap